Welcome back, everybody. It's Rama from Junk Journal Divas. Hello, my friends. It's Rama. I am back, and we are going to have some messy fun today. So my last video, I was working on a bee journal, and I had a lot of fun making it, and I have a whole bunch of stuff left over, so I thought, let me just keep going. So I'll show you what I have here. Now, I did put together another cover. I will link my other videos in case you want to see this, but this is just packaging. I think this is a an Amazon package, the brown paper, and I covered it with this fabric. I did put pockets on the inside. If you watched my other videos, I made these guys digitally. So these frames and the girls, they're all separate pieces. This is what the frame looks like without, you know, that's how they come in the kit. Okay, so let me just say, to start off here, I'm going to be playing with a whole bunch of House Whimsy digitals, all of them in the video description, and a whole bunch of different mediums because I just got new mediums from YANETTE. If you don't know about YANETTE, you've got to check it out. She has a Facebook group that's called Tim Holtz and More, Buying and Selling. Anyway, her information is in the video description also. Now that I explained all of that, again, so my thought was that I could use these as like a little flip, turn it into a pocket maybe. And if I leave this blank, you can write something on the back side. So I've got those, and then I did a little bigger size. So I want to jazz these up a little bit. Okay, I don't know if I really need to do anything to this one. I'll put this over here. And I'm not even sure exactly what I'm going to do or what I'm going to play with, so I am going to probably do a lot of voiceover and speeding up this video because it's usually what I do when I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing. I just want to play. So I got new ink pads from her, and I want to play around with some stamps and embossing powder, embossing glaze. This is the Tim Holtz Distress Embossing Glaze. I also got these guys, so I thought, I don't know if I'll get to this, but it would be cool since I'm doing bee theme to do some bees. I've got, these are just tag backgrounds that I did really quick. It's just some cardstock with book pages, and I just grunged them up a little bit. So I might do some tags with these. All right, so the embossing glaze I'm going to put here with that stamp because I definitely want to play with that. I grabbed some distress paint and spray, and then I also have the distress spritz. And we're going to play around. And YANETTE has all of this stuff. She also has fabrics and stuff. I'm telling you, so many things. I could just go crazy looking at everything that she has. And then I've got the Astro paste and lunar paste, and we're going to talk about the difference. And I also have some tags that I printed. These are House Whimsy, and all I did was add in the bees and the flowers. So I want to do something fun to those. I've got more of my bee girls here if I want to do something to them. Oh, my bee sentiments I have in my shop. And again, just some little pieces. These are House Whimsy papers, and I just took the small little pieces to put, to make little tags or something. Okay, and then you guys know my, I don't know if I have any, I don't think I have any more of the embossed paper, but like this little piece here, I put the embossing powder on, and it's just, yeah, it's just one of my favorite things to do is play with these papers. So I want to make more, And I thought, let's play around with some mediums while I'm doing this. So I want to show you, now this is the refined copper Astro paste. If you can see, it looks like a paste. If you look closely, there's glitter in it. So when this dries, the glue is clear and all you see is the glitter. So this is an example of what it looks like. Okay, so there's that. And I just put some on my finger and I just did this little circles going around this one. And I'm going to add to these, but I just wanted to see what this looks like. Oh, this is another one that I had laying here, so I thought, let me just grab it and put some stuff on. So you see the glitter went down into the cracks there. Okay, and then I just did some extra paper, so I've got white ones that I did. So one thing, if you're not familiar with doing embossed papers, I don't know if you can see, like here, I don't know if you can see the areas where the paper tore a bit. So when you're doing embossing, and I forgot to do this, if you have a water bottle and you just spritz it, like I hold it up high, just one spritz and put your paper through then, and it keeps it from tearing. So I thought, okay, well, what if I just spritz with Distress Spritz? And that's what I did. So I don't know if this will really show up. This is literally one squirt. So it's not a whole lot, but it does add the shimmer. Okay, so we're gonna play around with these. Now what I wanted to see was if there's really any difference between embossing the paper and then adding the Astro paste, or adding the Astro paste and then embossing the paper. And also guys, just to tell you, finish this thought here. See, when I'm excited, I just bounce from thing to thing. And this is why I can't, this is why I can't do videos when I'm just playing around, because I'm all over the place. But the Astro is the glitter. Lunar it's just the paste, a metallic paste. So I like using this rubbing over a stencil, but I might want to play with this. So anyway, these are the things that I might want to play with, all those brown colors. Okay, so back to this. I'm going to run this through my embossing machine quickly because I just want to see if it makes any difference. Okay, so this is running it through after. Okay guys, my hands, I actually ran through some of this homemade paper and I put a little bit more of the spritz on so the shimmer shows up better. All right, so I'm going to put everything aside except for these embossed papers, and that's what I'm going to be playing with right now. Now, I got my new minis, but I am not going to open these up because I'm going to be mixing all the colors together, and I don't want to make those all messy just yet. So let me see. I'm going to grab Rusty Hinge, and then I've got all my brown colors here. All right, that's good enough. Okay, now I want to try, since we did the Astro is glitter, we did the Astro paste, I want to try some Lunar paste. So let's do that. Now I just want a little bit on my finger. So I'm just going to use this cap like this. And you guys, I'm going to speed up the parts where I'm just rubbing on things because otherwise this will be a very long video. I'll let this dry. So I wanted to kind of just compare a little bit here. So I'm using on the right side, what I'm using right now, that is the copper lunar paste. And I also wanted to try some of the distress paint. So this is the tarnished brass. And I'm using this on the left side. But once I got towards the middle, I realized that I kind of like blending both of them together. So you'll see after I get to the middle, I just start blending them together, and then I grab the other ones that I put the lunar paste on, and I added a little bit of the distress paint to those also. It's kind of hard to see in the video, of course, because everything is kind of shiny and you've got the glare. But I really liked the layers that, you know, it gives it a little more dimension since it's not all the same color. So here, this is what I'm doing. I'm just kind of putting a little bit on with the lunar paste and vice versa. And now these are the papers that I put the Astro paste on, Astro the glitter. So I've got the glitter on. Now it's very hard to see in the video, but even though the metallic is going on top of it, you do kind of still see the glitter a little bit underneath there. It's kind of darker in some areas. And since I like all those together, again, that was the distress paint and the copper lunar paste. And so I thought, let me just add more, because I'm telling you guys, it's all about layering things up. At least that's what I love about these papers. So this is the Fool's Gold, it's called, and this is the Astro. So I'm adding some gold glitter. Okay, so now I'm going to take these two. If you see, these are opposite sides of the embossing plate. These are both white. So now I'm just layering up a whole bunch of my ink colors. I can add inks on top of the distress paint and the lunar paste because it won't smudge or move, but you do have to make sure that your ink is dry. So I ended up, when I added the yellow, I really liked it. It made it really pop and look like bright gold. So that was really kind of fun. And you guys, I've done this so many times playing around, but I'm always learning more because you just never know how things are going to turn out. It's kind of like painting. You just never know. So again, I'm going over some of the other ones with the yellow. And it's just fun to kind of experiment with all the different colors. I'm pretty much using all of my yellows, oranges, and all the brown, shades of brown. Now, usually if I do something like the walnut stain, I will do that last. Like this is the walnut stain. So I've gone over it with a bunch of colors. And now I'm going in just really lightly brushing over the top because I want to just kind of get the raised parts. And you can see when I do that, hopefully you can tell, it really makes those lines and the raised part of the paper, it really makes that part pop. And now I am going to go over this also with embossing glaze, which is kind of like, it melts, and it is a translucent glaze. So it makes all those colors, you know, really come together and pop. And now you see I'm going over that with my heat gun, going over all of the papers because I want my ink to dry. Now this paper, again, it's hard to see, but I had the glitter. It was in some portions down in the cracks, but not everywhere. So I'm going over it again and just kind of trying to rub that glitter down into the cracks. And of course, since I have it out, why not add some glitter to other papers? It's all about the layers. So I went over the papers with the paint and also the paste, but now I want to just start with my inks. Now this is usually what I do, is I just start with my inks right onto the paper. And I'm just layering up all of the colors just like I've done before. The only difference is I started with that lunar paste and my distress paint. If you like lighter colors, not quite as grungy, I guess I would say, that's what I kind of look at it as, grungy, when I add in my walnut stain. Now, if you want it to be more subtle and less grungy, I would go with just the vintage photo. And another one that I like to mix with that is the brushed corduroy, because it has kind of a yellow undertones to it, so the contrast is kind of cool. And now I'm starting with the embossing glaze. So I'm going to try a couple of different things here, and you can see this, I am using the vintage photo ink and then the vintage photo embossing glaze. So at the end you can see the difference between if I use the same color of ink or if I use the embossing ink, which is clear. So this is so I went over just the white paper, and now this is one that we kind of were playing with, and I went over it again with all the vintage photo, and now on this side I am just using the clear embossing ink. And the difference there is you can kind of see the lines again, because you're going over it with the dark ink that has a color. And as I always say, this is my favorite part. I love watching the powder melt. It's like magic. And then I just wanted to show you, again, I used the same color of embossing glaze. The only difference is it is the clear embossing ink on top, and on the bottom, I used the vintage photo ink with the glaze on top. So you can see the difference. And now I'm just going to keep playing and try some different colors. This is the fossilized amber that I'm using. So this will be a really light one. And I did, at the end, I go over all the colors, and I hope I got it straight, because I thought I knew, I could remember what I was doing here, but by the time I got to the end and I was doing my results, yeah, I had no idea. I was, just getting confused because I had so much stuff out. But hopefully this video helps you all just kind of get some ideas and inspire you to play with these products, and it's a lot of fun. The embossing powder is one of my favorites to play with. So you can see that one that I just did, it's a lot lighter than the other ones. Now, a lot of times what I do, if you see on the top right corner, that has the powder on it. So a lot of times I'll just put the powders on a couple at a time, and then I do my heat guns so I can heat them all together instead of doing one paper at a time. So next up, I want to play with stamps and the embossing powder. So here I'm just using the embossing ink, which is clear. And if you can see there, my my dauber, the top of it came off, so there's a lot of ink on the stamp here. So my idea, what I wanted to do was the clear ink and then the colored ink, and I wanted to show you the difference, but since I got so much embossing ink on the stamp the first time, it didn't quite turn out very well. And again, I'll go over all of these at the end when I do my results. Now I'm not showing heat setting all of this, the powder, because it really makes a mess and it gets all over my desk. So now I'm moving on to my bee stamp. And so when I did this, and you can't really tell in the video here, but I did the dark ink, and this is black ink, and then I'm going over it with the vintage photo embossing glaze. And now it looks like the powder is on the ink right now, but when I went to heat set it, all the powder just blew off of it. So the powder, or I mean the ink, just was not quite wet enough. So I'm trying to line up my stamp with embossing ink. So I'm going over top of it. Now this is pretty much going to end up the way it would look if my black ink was wet enough to make the powder stick. Because the thing is, the embossing glaze, again, is translucent. So if I were to just go over this with a clear stamp, you wouldn't really see the bee very well. And now I'm just kind of playing around. I'm using the embossing ink pen and going over with different colors, just kind of playing around here. Now, hopefully, I'm throwing out all these different names and colors and stuff, so I'm hoping I didn't make mistakes here. So the one thing, this wasn't very yellow, so I did end up going over it with my paint marker, which you will see here coming up, because I really wanted the bumblebee, the lines. I'm just playing around with different colors on the wings. This is really fun if you have a flower or something to go in with the marker or the ink, the embossing ink pen, and just play around with adding different colors. The only thing is it's very time consuming because you have to add the color and then heat set it and then add color and heat set it. Okay guys, so let's look at some of our results that we got here. I'm going to start with my bees just because they're right here. So I used black ink. Now I tried to do something to show you. Now if you want the ink to show up, so let's say like this bee, for example, if I just used the embossing glaze without using black ink, you wouldn't be able to see the bee. So the black ink really helps to make the color or the outline pop. I wanted yellow on the bottom, so I used my marker. Okay, so on these, I was trying to kind of show you guys the difference. I used on this one the embossing ink, and I kind of used a lot of it because my sponge fell off. So that's why it looks like there's a lot here. But what I was trying to do was show you that this one, I used this ink. So it would show up a little bit more because it's this color of ink with this color of glaze on top of it. For this one, I just used the clear ink and then the glaze on top of it, but unfortunately, my little experiment to show you guys didn't really make much of a difference because so much of this went on. Next up, I'm just going through this really quick. I wanted to add some glitter to the wings of my bumblebees. So I am using my Astro paste. Remember, Astro is the glitter. And I'm using this kind of flat stencil brush to just kind of go over the wings. So on these, I just use a little bit, and then I also put some on my dolls, and I put a lot on. So you can see the difference in, you know, just how much you apply. And then I also, this is the stickles with, it's clear with just the silver glitter in it. So I'm adding a little bit of this to some of them. And just playing around. Again, you guys, it was like, oh, so much stuff playing with. Okay, guys, so these are my results. We're going to take a look at some of them and compare a little bit. Let me just first show you these guys that I did. So this is just clear with some sparkle in the stickles. And then I added some copper here, which is the lacquer pen. This is Hero Arts. Again, this is there, it's all from YANETTE. So if you can see those different colors on there, there's more of just the glitter on that one. And then on this one, if you can see, I used the Fool's Gold, the Astro paste. Now I put a lot on, so you can just put a little bit on if you just want it to be, you know, just a little bit of glitter there. And we saw the bees, so let's take a look at these guys because this is what I spent a lot of time on. Okay, so I started out using the distress paint and the lunar paste. This is like a copper, and this is more goldish looking. It's a tarnished brass is the color. But when I put it on, it just looks kind of gold, especially compared to this one. And then I was realizing that I liked blending the two of them together. So if you can see these, this is the craft stock paper, the brown. And I'm just going to kind of move them around a little bit so that you can see. So you can see I added the inks on top, and I blended the copper and the gold together. So again, it's all a preference. I personally like all the different layers of stuff on these. But let me just kind of move to, okay, this one, for example, you can see this is just the vintage photo. I rubbed the ink over it. And then the embossing dauber, the clear. Okay guys, so I'm taking a little time out to explain this a little bit better. This was just the paper that I went over it with my ink, my vintage photo ink pad. And then I used the embossing ink, which is clear, and the vintage photo embossing glaze. So I used these guys. Okay, so let's take a look at these two. On both of these, I have the vintage photo embossing glaze. So you can see how different it turns up depending on the colors and everything that you have underneath. So this, it looks like I added a little bit of the walnut stain also, because I definitely blended the inks here and then added on the embossing glaze, because whatever you do underneath, it's going to kind of bring the color up. Just like if something is wet, it makes it look more rich. The color kind of does the same thing, because again, this is just a glaze. Now this one was definitely really unique. This was the homemade paper. And this one I was adding different colors of inks on, and I felt like it was too dark. So then I added some yellow ink and glaze on top. And so again, it looks like I put something dark on it, but it's just because it was the dark ink, and this is so light, it just made that color pop up. But this paper was, I don't know, it was definitely different. It's not as waxy, and even when I was heating it, it was a little weird. So again, it's just a different texture, does different things. Just show you this one. So if you have one of these wood green embossing folders, this really looks cool if you play with different colors of browns and just mix them up a little bit. It really truly looks like a piece of wood. Okay, so these are both the white paper. Now this, I can tell this has the tarnished brass on it. You can see that color. And you can kind of see I rubbed over top of that. So when I'm using these two, you can put these down and go over top of it, and this doesn't move. Okay, so this is an acrylic paint, and I don't know what this is, but once it dries, it's on there. So once you have that on, then you can go over top of it with some of your inks if you want. And then you have to let that dry, because it's kind of like, you know, wet ink on top of a slick surface. And then this one I just wanted to show. So this is the tarnished brass over here. And then I went over top of it with some embossing glaze and just the glaze. And this looks like I used the fossilized amber glaze on top. So you can't see the ridges. So I know that I must have just used this in the regular clear embossing ink, because if I would have used a dark color, you'd be able to see the ridges sticking up more, if that makes sense. Okay, what do I have? Two in the back here. So this is another one of those homemade papers, and you can see I put a little more of the ink on here. So sometimes when you use regular ink, not the embossing ink, sometimes regular ink, the embossing powder doesn't stick to it as much, because this embossing ink is really sticky. So keep that in mind also, because if you can see here, this doesn't have a lot of the glaze on top of it because it didn't stick. So this one I added vintage photo to just the paper, and then I did the vintage photo with the embossing glaze on top of that. And you know, you guys know I was mixing all the inks together, so I can see I must have put some yellow down on there first, and then did this, and then did some of the glaze on top. And then this one, also the white paper. So this one I just did a mixture of these kind of lighter colors. I did not go over top of it with a darker one, so I did not use the vintage photo, or I also had walnut stain, but I did not go over it with a darker color. And then after that, so you can see, since I didn't go over it with a darker color, you can see those ridges are not quite as, you know, popping out, so not quite as dark. So after I did the ink, then I went over it with the fossilized amber glaze. So here you go, guys. If you have not played with these products, I hope that I inspired you and kind of gave you an idea of ways that you can play with these and ways to layer them up a little bit. I'm just sharing what I learned because this is one of my favorite things to do, is just get messy and play around with all of this stuff. Again, I have YANETTE's information in the video description if you want to contact her about buying any things. I love to support my creative friends. And next up in my video, I'm going to be using these things that I did to put together my other journals. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you soon for more crafty adventures. If you liked the video, please do give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. And leave me a comment, let me know if you have played with any of these products.